Morning.
Glad to see you all sitting out here. Of course, everybody knows the routine, right? Because it's kind of rainy and nasty outside, and everybody here gets extra Jesus points, especially during Christmas. So we are glad you are with us today in the place or out there in that place we call Zoom World, later on Facebook or YouTube. Always, always, you are welcome. Okay, so when I was planning December's talk themes, I realized that I had not done a song-based talk in quite some time. And what better time to do a song-based talk than Christmas, right? So what did I choose? Did I choose Joy to the World? Or Love Came Down? Or any one of those great Christmas songs? No, 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 no. I chose What I Did for Love. What I Did for Love, one of the greatest piano bar standards of all time. Now, I know that's not exactly a Christmas song. And this song is also the reason I haven't been anywhere near a piano bar at closing time in about 30 years. Let me explain that. I want you to take some of these words from the song. Did what we had to do. Can't regret. Won't forget what I did for love. Okay, take those words, mix with alcohol at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you get my point, right? You know, especially, and it's really upsetting during the Christmas season, right? That happens, and maybe people are going through a rough time in their lives, or they're going through a breakup, and you put all that together and just, no, no, no. What I Did for Love, however, is probably best remembered from the Broadway musical A Chorus Line. Now, if you don't know about this particular play, the characters in this show reminisce about all their sacrifices they made for their love of stage and theater. They recall what they had to endure in order to live out their vision of performing. They reflect they did what they had to do. Won't forget, can't regret what I did for love. So for these people, all of the long hours of rehearsals, the hard work, the injuries, the months of traveling, all great sacrifices, worthy sacrifices for their love of their art. What we do for love, the stuff we do for love. You know, people do some pretty strange stuff for love, don't they? We've seen those, stories about people proposing on the jumbotrons, right, at sporting events. Most of those have happy endings, right? Did see one, however, where the person who thought she was going to be the bride looks up and she sees the proposal. She sees her to-be fiancé down on one knee holding up the ring. Did she say yes? No, she got up and walked out. Yeah, it was cool. Very public. I read a story where one guy invited his girlfriend on a plane ride, right? And they flew over this hayfield, and he had hired a farmer to mow "Marry Me" into the field. Now, wasn't that nice? Kind of strange, but it was nice. One woman got so tired of waiting for her boyfriend to propose, she baked a cake and she put an engagement ring right on top of it. Subtle, very subtle. Fun stuff, right? Fun stories. But love encourages displays of sacrifice and devotion well beyond its initial stages, at various ages and at different times in lives, through multiple circumstances. Consider this. If you are a parent or if you have been a parent and, your children are now adults, think about the sacrifices of time and money and energy, the things you gave up in order to keep your children clothed and educated and to have great lives. And why did you do that? Because you love your kids, right? You want them to have the best of everything that you can provide. And this love continues no matter how old they get, because as my mom always reminded me, Danny Adrian, I don't care how old you get, I will always be your mama. And you will always be my child. I brought you into this world, and I can take you out. Yeah, some of y'all have heard that. You're laughing, right?
What did she call Danny?
Danny Adrian, my middle name. Adrian. So now you know something else about me. Couples of all types without children also make sacrifices too. You know, Richard and I have made sacrifices. We've both given up jobs and promotions and so forth so that, we can be together. We all know men and women who have cared for their homebound partners until they pass away. Many adult children care for their aging parents in their later years. Some aging parents care for their children throughout their lives because, even as adults, for various reasons, they're unable to provide for themselves. And why do we do that? Why do we make those sacrifices? Well, I believe most of us make those sacrifices because despite all the evidence to the contrary that we see around us, I believe we really do in our cores love one another. And it's that sometimes that challenging give and take nature of love I'd like to look at for a few moments today. Some of us growing up, some people were fortunate enough to grow up in an atmosphere of unconditional love. That, of course, doesn't mean there weren't hard times or that, maybe we didn't misbehave and there had to be some boundaries drawn for us and so forth. It just means these folks knew that no matter what happened in their life, no matter how badly they screwed up, they had the unconditional love and support of their family. Others of us, however, probably received more mixed messages about love. In those families, love wasn't so much just given unconditionally. Love and acceptance were things you earned. And you earned it by things like good behavior, being the good boy or the good girl. Accomplishments, making the highest grades in the class, getting into good schools, getting good jobs, meeting family expectations, marrying the right kind of people, providing grandchildren down the road, and all those types of things. Associating with only the right people. Miss the mark, and it could get downright ugly sometimes. And not only that, sometimes this type of separation, be it physical, be it emotional, or a combination of both, sometimes, people can't bring themselves to reconcile even at death. And that's unfortunate. And I believe a lot of us receive some mixed messages about God and God's love growing up. In some instances, it's God loves us all just as we are. And then sometimes we hear, not quite. God loves you, but, there are rules, and you've got to have to make some changes in order to, for God to continue to love you. And if you don't make those changes before you die, in some faith traditions, that separation from God becomes eternal. Which I find kind of strange because in the book of Romans, in the 8th chapter, it tells us there is nothing above, below, nothing at all which can separate us ever from the love of God. Yet we hear that. Other mixed messages about God? Well, here's one. God hears and answers every single prayer, no exceptions. Or God answers only the prayers of the faithful. But who are these faithful whom God favors? Whole other issue altogether. Another mixed message we hear in the Bible, it says God is no respecter of persons. But then also in the book of Romans, there's this phrase or this verse that says, God has destined some for greatness or blessing and others for destruction. So some traditions take that to say that God has predestined some of us to go to heaven and some of us to go to hell. And there's really nothing you can do about it. So if that's true, if we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't, why bother? Right? Why bother? And how do you know? How do you know that you're part of the group that's going to get the good seats, after you die? How do you know that? Who makes that determination? Is it God? And do we have to wait until we die to find out? And after that, isn't the point kind of moot? It's confusing, right? And what about that scripture from 1 John, the one, that says, God is love, period. No exceptions. And all of it's in the Bible. And we all have different ways of interpreting that. It's very confusing. We get a lot of mixed messages about God and God's love. Now, to be fair, some of those interpretations of God and God's love from the Bible are from much earlier cultures. And they make sense. Because during that time, you had people and that believed that God was, an external being, and that God is a super deity who favors some and not others based on our sacrifices and our behaviors. Sound familiar? Sometimes you're the good boy, and when you're the good boy, you get the good stuff, and if you're the bad girl, you get the bad stuff, right? Depending on your sacrifices and your behaviors, God either favored you or God did not. And that makes sense for that time. And what I'm saying here is people did the best they could with what they knew and what they were taught. We do the same thing today, right? We're all just doing our best with what we know and so on. At the same time, what you also see in the Bible is an evolution, a change from what we call the Old Testament through the New. You see an evolution of how people see God and God's love and their relationship with God. Times changed. We learned more. We grew. We evolved. Traditions changed. How people saw God changed. Religious traditions changed. We don't do sacrifice the way they did in the Bible anymore, thank goodness. Things changed. And speaking of change and traditions changing, I read an article recently. The author described God as an iconoclast. In other words, an image breaker. He sees God as an image breaker, one who sees things differently. God, in this person's opinion, shatters human traditions and, this is the important part, shatters human traditions and makes contributions that are creative and constructive. Now, in humanity, we're really good about destroying stuff just for the heck of destroying it sometimes, right? It's that getting creative part and rebuilding in positive ways that we sometimes struggle with. So if that author has a point, and I think he might, if the whole way we experience God, however you see God, as one, or that expression of God as one of iconoclast, one who destroys human traditions but rebuilds in creative ways, and unity teaches that each one of us is an expression of this God, what does that mean for us? It means that we too are called to be iconoclasts. We too are called to be creative and constructive and reimagine things like love. How does God's love look in today's world? Here are a few thoughts. Real love, divine love, is reflected in how we care for one another, how we talk with one another, and how we listen to one another. Real love means seeing our common humanity. If you took the Crucial Conversations class, you might remember sometimes even if you cannot respect a person or if you cannot trust a person for whatever reason, at least try to see our common humanity. We're all on this planet together, folks, doing the best we can with what we have. Real love, in the face of inhumane behavior, is able to see our common humanity. That's not always easy. Real love is reflected in how we work together for things like peace and justice. Real love sometimes requires sacrificing those shiny little halos, getting involved, coloring outside the lines of polite society, and getting into what Representative John Lewis calls good trouble. Real love is beautiful, and real love is messy. Real love requires sacrifice, and you know what? Sometimes real love requires saying no. Healthy boundaries are a good thing. Real love sometimes requires saying no to ourselves and our wants for the benefit of others. Remember, our children, our grandchildren, our communities. Sometimes it means setting aside our wants for the good of the whole. Love looks to serve the greater good for as many people as possible. And that's not always easy in a me-first world. Now, I realize I've said a lot today about the sacrificial nature of love, but I want to make sure we don't forget about healthy self-love as well. Right? That's just as important, if not more important. Why? Because you can't give what you don't have. What is it that great theologian RuPaul once said? If you don't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else? Right? So what this means is, not only is real love about giving love and care, it means opening ourselves to receive love and care. Let people open the door for you. Let people take you to lunch, buy you your favorite beverage. Allow people to compliment you and say thank you. Allow people to love you as much as you love them. Real love, divine love, cannot be bought, even in our materialistic culture. I don't care what the commercials say with the big red bows on the cars and the flashy little bling and all that. That's nice stuff. Nothing wrong with stuff. But that's not really love. You can't buy love with stuff like that. You can't buy it with words. You can't buy it with anything. Can't buy it with money. And that's kind of frustrating about love too, isn't it? Because love often defies neat and tidy definitions. Love, like God, simply is. You know, the good news in unity is that we also teach love as a power. Love is one of our 12 powers. Love is something that each and every one of us has inside of us. There is a potential for love within each and one of us. And when we take that love and we combine it with our power of wisdom, we are manifesting a love that is beautiful and holy and just. During the season of Advent, we celebrate the birth and the manifestation of one such example of that kind of love in the birth of the person Jesus. You know, in Jesus, we learn that divine love expresses through humanity. And you know what the really good news is? Some people took Jesus at his word. You know, when Jesus said, if you believe, you can do what I do and you can do even more. We are one with God. I am one with God. You can be one with God. Some people took Jesus at his word. And what that means is once the man Jesus was no longer walking the earth, divine love, God did not go with him. Divine love expressed through different people in different ways and through different religions. Oh, I forgot to tell you that's something else about love. No one religion will ever be able to contain and control how, when, and through divine love manifest. Nobody has a market on divine love. And I believe divine love is expressing through us today. Whenever we care for one another and we reach out to others and we sincerely work together as a community, being open to learning from other faiths and sharing our faith with others, we are, in effect, I believe, reflecting divine love. So in this season, and in every season, rather than reflect on what we did for love, let's reflect on what we are doing for love, how we are being love in this time and in this space. A love that reflects peace, joy, hope, faith, and yes, love for all of creation. That is your homework assignment for this week. And I look forward to hearing from you.